Have you ever told someone, "I'm praying for you," and felt a small, immediate relief, not for them, but for you? That relief is worth paying attention to, because sometimes that sentence is exactly what someone needed to hear. And sometimes, if we're honest, it's the fastest way to end a conversation that was making us uncomfortable. I sat with a man once, years into grieving his son, who told me something that stayed with me ever since. He said, "Everyone tells me they're praying for me. Nobody asks me what Tuesdays feel like now." He wasn't angry at God. He was exhausted by how quickly people moved from his pain to their own relief. I've heard some version of that sentence from dozens of people over the years. Someone whose marriage ended hearing, "God works all things together for good," too soon. Someone who lost a parent hearing they're in a better place now from someone who barely knew them. None of those people are villains. That's exactly what makes this worth slowing down on. There's actually a name for what most of us do without realizing it. Pastoral researchers and counselors call it spiritual bypassing, using a spiritual phrase to avoid sitting with something genuinely hard to be near. Saying, "I'm praying for you," takes 4 seconds. Actually staying to hear the answer can take an hour you didn't plan for. Here's what's uncomfortable about naming this. Your brain registers someone else's visible pain as a kind of threat to your own sense of control. Offering a quick, practiced response is one of the fastest ways your brain knows to end that discomfort. "I'm praying for you" can be a closed door dressed up as an open one. Think of it like standing at the edge of cold water. Most of us don't dive in. We dip a toe, decide it's too much, and back away while telling ourselves we tested it. A quick spiritual phrase is the toe-dip version of comfort. Scripture shows us the difference. When Job lost everything, 3 friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, traveled from their own towns to be with him. For 7 days, they said nothing. They sat on the ground with him in silence because his suffering was too great for words. It's only after they finally open their mouths that the story turns into one of the most famous cautionary tales in the Bible. Chapter after chapter, their explanations get worse, not better. By the end, God tells them plainly that they spoke wrongly. The silence wasn't the failure, the talking was. And here's the detail that keeps this from becoming a story about never praying for anyone again. At the very end of the book, God actually tells Job to pray for his 3 friends. Prayer wasn't the problem. The problem was letting a sentence about prayer arrive 7 days too early. So maybe the real measure of comfort was never the right sentence at all. Maybe it was always whether you were willing to stay in the room without one. This changes how I think about something Jesus did too. At the tomb of his friend Lazarus, he didn't open with an explanation, even though he already knew Lazarus was about to walk out alive. He let himself be moved by what moved them, before he did anything at all about it. It would have been so easy for him to lead with the ending. He could have walked up to a weeping Mary and said, in effect, "Don't cry, watch what I'm about to do." Instead, he let her cry, and he cried with her, and only after that did he move toward the tomb. Comfort isn't something you say, it's something you stay for. If Job's friends had trusted their first 7 days instead of their next sentence, their names might be remembered very differently. So here's something small and specific to try this week. Think of one person in the middle of something hard right now. Instead of preparing what to say, plan only this. Show up and ask one honest question. What does an ordinary Tuesday actually feel like for you right now? Then don't fix the answer. If you genuinely don't know what to say once you're there, you're allowed to say exactly that. "I don't know what to say, and I'm not going to pretend I do. I just didn't want you to be alone with this today." That sentence does more than almost anything more polished ever has. If you're the one who's been hearing, "I'll pray for you," from everyone and feeling more alone instead of less, it's not because your pain wasn't worthy of more. It's because presence is harder to offer than a sentence, and most people will choose the easier one without realizing it. You don't need fewer people praying for you. You need a few who are willing to sit in the silence first. Maybe the next time someone you love is standing in cold water, The most spiritual thing you can do isn't to call out instructions from the shore. It's to get in. If this named something you've felt on either side of, tell us in the comments. And if you know someone who's been carrying something hard while everyone around them keeps moving too fast past it, send them this.